Hi everybody and welcome to week 8. It's hard to believe that this semester is almost half over and that spring break is right around the corner. I don't know about you, but I can detect just a hint of spring in the air. While I love winter, I'm always glad to see the first of the flowers poking through the snow and the return of some of the migratory birds to our area. As you've already probably surmised, I'm using a different method for introducing this unit of instruction. Please let me know what you think. All right, so let's review. Up to this point, we've reviewed many steps of the research process. Do you remember what they are? First, identify your problem and your purpose, then form a team. As a team, develop your aim, questions, or hypothesis and the study variables. Next, review the literature. Do you have enough evidence to proceed? Are there gaps in what we know about the problem? Does more research need to be done? Then identify your framework or theoretical foundation and any assumptions and limitations that are important moving forward. Identify your design. Will you use quantitative, qualitative, or a mixed method design? What method? Develop the protocols and identify your sample and population and setting. Identify your measurements and the tools, instruments that you'll use to collect data. Check the reliability and validity of those tools. Submit your proposal to the IRB for approval. So very important to ensuring the protection of human rights. I know we discussed this earlier in the process. That's because it needs to be considered from the very beginning. It is a common thread for consideration throughout the process. Then last week, do you remember? We talked about collecting the data. For most researchers, this is the easiest part of the study. Whew. I'm not sure about you, but we've already covered a lot of ground, and you guys are doing an awesome job. Fortunately, we only have a few more steps to get through before we can move on to what BSN graduates are expected to apply, and that is the evidence-based practice piece. Weeks 12 through 16 are dedicated to learning about this process and applying it to your projects. But first, we have a few more steps of the research process to learn about: analyzing and interpreting the data, and then disseminating your findings. This is the part of the research course where you'll need to dig out your statistics books and notes and recall what you learned in your stats courses. Hopefully I didn't scare anyone. I know for some, stats can be a little scary and cause some anxiety. No worries. We're not going to be exploring in much depth. You don't need to actually calculate any statistics. But for those of you that need to brush up, I have provided some video resources for review. In this unit, we'll be exploring how to analyze and interpret data and how researchers use the data to answer their questions. That makes sense, right? Isn't the whole point of doing research to answer a burning question? In order to answer the question, they need to collect data. Then researchers need to take the collected data, compile it, analyze it, and then interpret or make sense of the data using either numbers or stats for quantitative research or words or narration for qualitative research. When we think about analyzing quantitative data, the level of measurement, nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio, used now becomes very important. Do you remember why? If you answer because the measurement level dictates what statistical tests can be done, you'd be right. With lower level data like nominal and interval data, researchers use mostly descriptive statistics. Things like frequencies or percentages are typically reported. When researchers use interval and ratio level measurements to collect data, we can now apply different statistical analyses, both parametric and non-parametric. We can report central tendencies like the mean, the median, the mode. We can look at variability in data and standard deviation. We can also look at if an association exists between our variables using statistics like chi-square. Additionally, researchers can look at comparing differences between groups using a test analysis or analysis of variance, also known as ANOVA. Hopefully some of these sound familiar from your stats course and from your reading of the articles presented thus far. Qualitative analysis is a whole other story. Remember, with qualitative data, Other than demographic data, data is in the form of words and observations to develop an in-depth description of participants and their responses. Researchers must now interpret the meaning in participants' words and behaviors rather than by using numbers. Qualitative researchers look for emerging themes and data saturation in their analysis. But first, very similar to quantitative research, they need to develop a plan for analyzing their data. Similar to our other units, the focus of this unit is on quantitative research. As you can see from the assigned readings, your textbook is an excellent resource for you to review statistics. I suggest you skim the chapters as it should be a recall from your stats course. Read in more detail if things are a little fuzzy or foreign. Also, refer to the stats cheat sheets I provided during week 3. For the purposes of this course, those stats that I want you to be able to interpret include a correlation coefficient, mean, mode, and median, confidence intervals and the difference between confidence levels, p-values, level of significance, t-tests, analysis of variance, and chi-squared. There is no need unless you're interested in reviewing the more advanced statistical tests. For those of you that do need a little bit of a review, I have provided another Powtoon presentation just briefly defining those statistics I just mentioned, as well as providing some links for some videos on YouTube. Okay, hopefully I've not lost you. So what do researchers do with the data after they analyze it? They interpret it to 1. Answer their research question, 2. Discuss what I call the so what part of research. What does it mean for nursing practice? And then last, make recommendations about what they should do next. There is great power in the data. If you don't believe me, check out a few studies that have drastically changed practice. The first one, the Nurses' Health Study. This is a long-standing research study investigating health and wellness on the correlation with illness in women. The study started over 39 years ago. It is currently in its 3rd phase, and if you're interested in learning more about this study, I provided the link in the narrative description of this presentation. A little bit about the study. During the first phase, they investigated long-term risks for developing cancer and cardiovascular disease in women. Over 122,000 nurses participated across 12 states. This is where we learned about the correlation between birth control pills and venous thrombosis, as well as cancer risks related to nutrition. The second phase, done in the 1980s, enrolled more than 116,000 nurses. This study expanded on the findings from phase 1. These results significantly advanced our understanding of risks for diseases like diabetes, cancer, and cardiovascular disease. The investigation is now in its 3rd phase and in active recruitment. You could participate. As another competency of BSN graduates is participation in research, I hope that anyone that's eligible for participation will consider joining. The National Women's Health Study is hoping to recruit another 100,000 participants between the ages of 20 and 46 from across the U.S. and Canada. Researchers are focusing on the long-term effects of nutrition, hormones, environment, and nurses' work life on their health. The study is also enrolling men. The inclusion criteria are nurse or nursing student, age 19 to 46, living in the United States or Canada, currently working, not working, or retired. And even if you're already participating in another study like the Growing Up Today study, you can still participate in the National Health Study. I have provided the link to go to the registration page, again on the narrative of this video, if you're interested in joining. If you're not eligible, please pass this along and share it with another nurse. If you do register, though, please use an email other than your Bellin College email, because this is a longitudinal study. They're going to want to get in touch with you long after you graduate from Bellin. Wow! Just think the power of that data and how it's changed practice. Another important study was the Framingham Heart Study. You may have already discussed this in your Adult 2 course. This study started in 1948 with the purpose of identifying risk factors for cardiovascular disease. 77 years later, this study is still going strong, and data has been used to expand our knowledge about important diseases and risk factors that affect the heart, the brain, the bones, and the effect of sleep on disease. You can read more about this ongoing research by clicking the link in the narrative. Unfortunately, though, you cannot join this study. However, you can use the outcomes of their research to calculate your own risk or your patient's risk of various cardiovascular disorders such as diabetes. Please check out the prediction risk tool links that I have included in the narrative, and go ahead and play around with those. These are resources that you can use now with your assigned clinical patients, or perhaps even some of your own family. And again, just think about the power of the data. Okay, enough of me. So how should you proceed? Well, just like the other weeks, complete the assigned reading and videos as described. Complete the Canvas worksheet number 3 by the due date. This worksheet is about data analysis and statistics. Most of it should be review. Participate in the team discussion. This unit will be reviewing the data collected as part of the Great American Cookie Experiment, and your teams will be brainstorming ways to analyze it. No need to panic. You're not going to be running any stats, just brainstorming about how you could analyze the data and which tests might be appropriate. So you'll be doing a data analysis plan. You'll be able to see the Unit 13 objectives in the narrative, and as well as the assigned readings and activities. Please be sure to watch the videos that are hyperlinked if you need a review of statistics, and complete the individual and team assignments by the due date. As always, if you run into any questions or have any problems, please give me a jingle, stop by, or send an email. I hope you all have a great week, and we'll talk soon.